By coincidence, I returned on Sunday from another conference at the University of Sarajevo, where I presented a paper on living peacefully in free societies. And I can share with you that researchers there, like other scholars in different communities, are increasingly concerned about the narrowing horizon of freedom, both as a concept and as a practice. So my paper proceeds from a precise detail in the story of the campaign of Napoleon Bonaparte against Cairo in 1798. It is that he carried aboard his flagship L'Orient the first printing press to the Middle East. The printing press is a heavy machine and even an even heavier responsibility. Thus, Napoleon took 35,000 soldiers with him on his campaign, maybe to carry the heavy machine. Perhaps the Middle East would look entirely different today had the great emperor spent some time teaching Egyptians and Ottomans how to use the printing press to disseminate knowledge and civilization, especially since he brought with him, in addition to the printing press, a number of scholars and artists, but he did not. My research argues that some of the civilization that entered the region did so incidentally. Certain ideas of the modern world arrived through Napoleon's ships. The scientific methods, political freedom, economic freedom, and other notions developed to some extent during the French campaign. By virtue of my work in editing and studying Arabic manuscript, I can affirm that the efforts of European Orientalists helped to uncover and critically edit precious Arabic manuscript, despite certain distortions in reading and printing. Yet the campaign was not free of arbitrary practices and documented violations against the people of the region, their culture, and their particularities. Moreover, the radiance of Napoleon's printing press did not last long. Soon, the negative effects of the campaign appeared in religious discourse, particularly in the rise of extremist Islamic rhetoric as a reaction to colonial expansion. Napoleon used the printing press in a brilliant manner. He printed his first proclamation, to the Egyptian people in Arabic. And I place before you, maybe the next one, please. Yeah. And even the next one. Yeah, I wanted to read. So, yeah, this one, please. Thank you very much. I don't know if it's visible. So this is the original proclamation of Bonaparte. He wrote it in Arabic, right? He's addressing the Egyptians. And here I have a translation of a Czech-American editor whose name is John Christopher Harold, who translated the text in the 90s. Napoleon distributed this proclamation widely among Egyptians, saying to them, in the name of God, the clement and the merciful, there is no divinity save Allah. He has no son and shares his power with no one. And then he goes, in the name of the French Republic, founded on liberty and equality, etc. And then he goes back to show his respect and to the Egyptians, and he says that I worship God more than the Mamluks do, and that I respect his Prophet Muhammad and admirable Quran. So this is Napoleon proclamation. This is just part of it. He printed using the first printing machine, printing press, which arrived or landed in the Middle East. If we summarize the ideology of the campaign and its consequences, despite what some regard as its civilizational gains, we may describe it as a modern military invasion carried out within a pre-modern understanding of power. It unfolded in a world that did not yet recognize clearly defined national borders or binding and international conventions in the contemporary sense. Territorial expansion was widely accepted in a normal practice among empires and ruling powers. Muslim expansions had extended into the Middle East, North Africa, parts of southern France, the Iberian Peninsula, Malta, Crete, and Sicily. European powers likewise expanded into various regions before and after that period. So in most cases, geopolitical ambition and economic interest were central motives, while religion was woven into a carpet of moral justification upon which invaders walked with confidence. However, in this context, it is essential to distinguish between the values and higher objectives of religion and the practices of dominant systems in ancient world, practices shared by many societies and civilizations of that era, such as invasion, centralized authority, punishment for heresy, child marriage, slavery, and polygamy. Without apologizing for historical religious interpretations or for the practices of various Muslim societies, my research claims that in the pre-modern world, freedom enjoyed a broader space within the Islamic world. The decline of freedom in the modern era has both external and internal causes that cannot be ignored if we seek a comprehensive understanding of the crisis of freedom in the region. I argue that the two principal causes of the decline of freedom in the Islamic thought are the emergence of extremist Islamic movements, largely as a reaction to modern invasion of the Islamic world, and the intensification of internal political and economic repression combined with foreign intervention. The more internal repression and external interference increase, the more religious extremism rises. To demonstrate this, I will first present the characteristics of freedom briefly. In Islamic legal theory in the pre-modern world, that is before the emergence of extremist movements. I will then place these alongside examples of contemporary Islamic discourse shaped by modern colonial movements, leaving everyone free to compare, conclude, and discuss. We can move to, this one. Thank you. Just a disclaimer here, in this section I relied on classical sources, so manuals, textbooks, and manuscripts from the 7th to 16th century. I did not use any secondary sources. So to analyze this era and its characteristics in terms of Islamic legal theory, I observed the following features. The next one, please. So first, on the theoretical level, freedom in Islamic thought is a faith-based concept. It arises from the belief that freedom is a right granted to the human being by a higher power beyond human control and calculation. It is therefore primarily freedom from enslavement to materialism and freedom from the arrogance of the self and its desires, which incline towards selfishness, greed, and injustice. Two, freedom in Islamic legal theory. The second one, please. Thank you. Freedom in Islamic legal theory goes hand in hand with responsibility. So the individual is responsible for his or her convictions, words, and actions. No one inherits sin or privilege. Each acquires them through action. The third one, please. The concept of freedom is comprehensive, encompassing most areas of life. Theological and legal works of centuries addressed freedom of belief, personal status, and financial transactions as natural and divine rights, framed by individual responsibility. Freedom narrows somewhat in discussions on state structure and certain family relations due to political despotism, tribal solidarity, male centrality, and other features of the ancient world. The next one, please. Number 4, the concept of freedom rests upon respect for prevailing customs, or what we call urf. and the diverse traditions of people. Thanks to attention to local traditions and languages, legal methodologies developed from the mid-8th century onward across diverse environment from Indonesia in the east to Mauritania in the west. We find in the encyclopedias of Islamic jurisprudence, the jurisprudence of Medina, the jurisprudence of Iraq, jurisprudence of Faz, jurisprudence of Bosnia or Bushnaq, etc. Number 5, please. Feature number 5 is about public interest, or the way Islamic legal thought is conducted by jurists, how they do what we call ijtihad, like deduction, based on Aristotelian logic. Mostly. Islamic legal theory is grounded in the principle of public interest. The legal maxim states, wherever the public interest lies, there lies the law of God. Therefore, interpretative freedom was entrusted to scholars who were qualified in language, textual interpretation, and awareness of social reality, and who were trusted by the community in order to achieve the greatest benefit and prevent harm through the intellectual procedures known as ijtihad. I will now present several examples of legal rulings that were formulated on the basis of this concept. Thank you. First, in Islamic legal theory, the authority of religious law is guided by the principle, your law, your capacity. This means that anyone who chooses this religion must commit only to what they are physically, financially, and socially able to fulfill. These obligations are limited by the individual's capacity, not by the decision of society or a jurist. Number 2, or second, freedom of belief. The presence of skeptical scholars and theological critique are central to this system. Islamic jurisprudence affirms the plurality of beliefs, while religions have historically existed with relative freedom that could increase or decrease over time. Major educational institutions in the Middle East, such as Al-Azhar in Egypt, Al-Zaytuna in Tunisia, and Al-Qarawiyyin in Morocco, where I studied, have traditionally taught various theological schools and encouraged debate and discussion among scholars. The number 3 is another historical example. Despite historical records of oppressive practices, strict rulings, and violent acts, the general situation allowed for religious diversity and the protection of many rights under the framework of dhimma, meaning in Arabic covenant keeping and guaranteeing rights. I probably need to check to look at the 4th example. The classical jurisprudence recognizes the freedom to choose one school of thought and the religious authority that convinces the believer. There is no sacred institution or person whose opinions must be followed. The Muslim is free to choose the school or sect they wish to belong to. An educated and knowledgeable individual is expected to seek the opinion that best suits their circumstances and personal situation. On economic freedom, the next one, please. Thank you. In financial matters, the legally responsible individual was recognized as economically independent, whether man or woman, young or old, Muslim or non-Muslim. This represented a notable development within a society, Arabia, in which female infants had previously been buried out of shame. The principal obligatory financial duties were almsgiving or zakat for Muslims and the poll tax jizya for non-Muslims, forms of taxation that existed in various configurations prior to Islam and were incorporated into the emerging Islamic fiscal system. It is important to note, however, that jizya was imposed only on adult, free, able-bodied non-Muslim males, women, children, slaves, elderly, blind, the infirm, and typically members of the clergy. Jews and Christians were exempt. Another example, I will go to number 7. Slavery is very long, but we can discuss it later. It's okay. It's in family relations, contrary to common belief. A Muslim woman has the right to terminate her marriage, just as a man does. Classical legal texts state that she is not obligated to serve her husband in the house and may bring a complaint before a judge if wronged. And I will go straight to the freedom in the hands of modern Islamic groups. Yeah, thank you very much. In the modern era, with the rise of anti-colonial movements against imperialism, some Muslim reformers sought to reshape Islamic discourse and recognize Muslim societies after decades of decline and the imposition of imported political, economic, and social models that did not necessarily align with the cultures of the region's peoples. This gave rise to political Islamic groups, also known as reformist movements, such as Wahhabism in Arabian Peninsula and the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, among others, which formulated a discourse characterized by the following. Number one, control over the concept of freedom. They monopolize truth, thank you, and exclude dissenting voices. For example, some modern currents, like Wahhabism, a strict movement that emerged in the Arabian Peninsula in the 18th century and was later supported by Britain for geopolitical interests, such as ensuring advantage over other European powers and containing the Ottoman Empire, remain today the most widespread doctrinal school in the Islamic world. This ideology is particularly restrictive regarding freedom of belief and interpretation of religious texts. It recognizes only a single interpretation of Islamic doctrine, forbids free reflection and contemplation on the universe to understand God. It imposes faith as a religious obligation and systematically demonizes other Islamic schools, followed by the majority of Muslims worldwide. These organizations deliberately distort traditional tolerant Islam, or what is regarded as tolerant Islam, represented by a variety of schools of thought and Sufi orders grounded in local customs, ethnic and linguistic diversity, and accumulated educational, social, and cultural experiences over centuries across various communities. In the modern era, the next one, please. This ideology revived some jurisprudential opinions and invented others that restrict individual and collective freedom, mobility, expression, and dissent. For instance, regarding political liberties, some Wahhabi scholars, now you're familiar with them, this name, prohibit participation in elections, protests, and criticism of their rulers. Wahhabism shares this approach with other modern movements such as the Muslim Brotherhood in the Middle East and Europe, and the Ahmadiyya Qadiani movement in Asia and Europe, all of which arose and developed within a Western colonial context and share a central feature, which is da'wah, or proselytization, and the concentration of authority in the group's leadership, which dictates beliefs, practices, and limits individual autonomy. Some of you may be familiar with Wahhabi fatwas. Fatwa is an opinion, religious opinion. Requiring women to cover their faces and hands, forbidding them to drive, prohibiting travel without a male guardian, banning television, and forbidding music, among other restrictions. These edicts have suppressed freedom of thought, creativity, and critical reasoning, while widening the gap between men and women. What we call the Salafi ideologies, whether associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, Wahhabism, or jihadist movements, continue to influence Muslim mindset and households, posing a direct threat to freedom in both the East and West through their presence in mosques, Islamic centers, and online platforms. They continue to impose exclusionary and rigid interpretations that marginalize liberated and moderate narratives. In conclusion, I return to the French campaign. Napoleon. Yeah, the previous one, please. Yeah. The next one, please. Good. I could find the picture of. It was not censored, so I used it here. Napoleon returned to France in 1799, leaving General Jean-Baptiste Kléber behind. On 14 June 18,000, Suleiman, a young Syrian sent by the Ottoman authorities, assassinated Kléber in his garden. The historian Abdurrahman al-Jabarti, the next one, please. Right, this is an eyewitness, actually. He died in 1825. who lived in Cairo, the author of this book, who lived in Cairo during the campaign, recorded the event vividly, combining precise description of the trial, admiration for its procedures, how the French authority proceeded with the trial of the murder of Suleiman al-Halabi, and also he made some funny comments on the weak Arabic in which the French court drafted its record. Colonial authorities preserved the assassin's skull in French museums as a specimen for study in fanaticism, aka le Syrien fanatique. Can check it in French museums. Britain preserved copies of al-Jabarti's Chronicle in Princeton and Cambridge. Although the invaders made significant advances in medicine and scientific research, they also produced generations marked by greater fanaticism and destruction. Whether Bonaparte sincerely intended to liberate the East or not every ship opens the road to freedom. After 3 years, Egyptians had not learned to use the printing press, nor had they learned French. And the French scholars and soldiers did not learn Arabic, a language that might have spared them war and spread awareness by civil means. Islamic legal theory in the pre-modern era was more expansive in its conception of freedom because it emanated from a transcendent meaning, was attached to the diversity of human customs and sought human welfare. The contraction of freedom came with contemporary Islamic movements born from colonial disruption, with reduced religious discourse to the categories of lawful and unlawful. To liberate Muslim societies, Islamic discourse itself must be liberated both from the colonial complex and from the grip of extremist movements. Thank you.
Very much, that's great.